The air above the river is cool and clear. Isla zips up her jacket and walks along the path. Her long, straight hair flows behind her. She loves this quiet place after work. No one stares at her here. Just water, trees, and peace. Ahead, in the shallows, she spots a boy, about 7 years old. He's wearing a bright red jacket and trying to kick a stone in the water. Isla slows her pace. Her parents are nowhere in sight. She considers calling out to him, telling him to be careful, but decides not to scare him. She simply watches. He takes a step deeper, then another. The current is deceptive here. The bottom drops sharply. Isla knows this. She already opens her mouth to scream. And at that moment he disappears. He doesn't scream. He doesn't fall. His red jacket just flashes on the surface and disappears under the dark water. Isla doesn't think. She rips off her jacket, kicks off her boots, and runs. The grass beneath her bare feet is prickly and cold. She runs into the water. An icy shock grips her body, taking her breath away. She takes a few sharp strokes toward where he was. The water is murky. Sunlight filters weakly through the depths. She dives, opens her eyes. It stings. She sees only greenish darkness and air bubbles. Her hands grope in vain. She surfaces, inhales convulsively, and dives again. Her heart is pounding somewhere in her throat. The third time, she sees a blur of red below her, a flicker of a pale hand. She pushes off the slippery bottom with her feet and swims down. She grabs him by the jacket. She pulls him toward her. He is motionless. And then something grabs her leg. It's not driftwood. It's not seaweed. It's a grip. Fingers. Cold, clinging, human fingers tightening around her ankle. Panic pounds her temples. She kicks her free leg out into the darkness. She hits something hard. Her grip weakens. Isla pushes herself up off the bottom with all her might, one hand clutching the boy's jacket, and struggles upward. Her lungs are burning. Her ears are ringing. She breaks through the surface, gasping for air. With one hand, she pulls the boy up, turns him face up, and begins to paddle toward the shore. Her leg aches where her toes were pinched. She pulls him out onto the sand. He's not breathing. His face is waxy. Isla, shaking from cold and terror, remembers her first aid training. She starts pressing on his chest. 1, 2, 3. Water flows out of his mouth. Breathe, baby. Please breathe. After the 5th squeeze, the boy shudders and coughs. A hoarse, wet cough. He spits out water. His eyes roll back, then focus on her. He cries, quietly and inconsolably. Isla hugs him, rubs his cold hands. It's okay, you're okay, you're okay. He looks at her with huge dark eyes, full of unchildish fear. The coughing subsides, and he sobs convulsively. Ayla waits for the word thank you or a cry for her mother, but he whispers something else. His voice is quiet, broken. They will see. Isla blinks. Who? Who will see? Where are your parents? The boy doesn't answer. He raises his hand with effort and weakly points toward the dense forest on the opposite bank of the river. His hand is shaking. There, he breathes out and coughs again. Isla looks at the forest. No one is visible, only dark tree trunks and silence, but an icy shiver runs down her spine. She looks around. Her jacket and boots lie far away on the shore. Her phone is in her jacket. She needs to call emergency services. Now, what is your name? She asks, continuing to rub his hands. Minso, says the boy. Okay. Do you have a phone? Mom? Dad? Minso nods and points to his wristband, a simple silicone bracelet with a small plastic chip. Isla presses a button. A single contact appears on the mini-screen. Dad? And nothing else. She presses the contact button. The call takes a long time. Finally, the connection is established. Silence. Then a male voice. Low, calm, without a single note of anxiety. Minso? Hello, it's not Minso. Isla begins quickly, still shaking. Your son. He fell into the river. I pulled him out. He's fine, he's safe, but he's wet and scared. We need to call the paramedics. And the voice on the other end cuts her off. It's quieter, but every word is as clear as a thud of ice. Where are you now? On the shore, near the old bridge. Listen carefully, the voice says. There's no panic in it. There's a cold iron command. Don't move from this spot. Don't go near the road. Don't call anyone else. Can you hear me? Isla freezes. But he needs a doctor. You're being followed, the voice says, not raising its tone. Stay visible in the open. I'm on my way. 10 minutes. The connection is broken. Ayla slowly lowers her hand with the bracelet. She looks at Minso. He's quiet, his face buried in her shoulder. She looks at the forest, then at the road visible in the distance. You're being watched. Who? Why? She saved the child. Why did everything become so strange? She sits on the sand, holding the boy close, trying to warm him with her own body. 10 minutes. She counts the seconds. Every rustle in the reeds makes her shudder. The place that was always peaceful now feels like a trap. Exactly 9 minutes later, cars appear in the vacant lot at the start of the path. Not just one, two. Big, dark, expensive. They drive up completely silently, almost ghostly. 2 men emerge from the first car. They're not wearing tracksuits or casual clothes. They're wearing perfectly tailored dark suits. They don't run to the shore shouting. They walk slowly, looking around. Their gaze darts over the forest, the bushes, the far shore. Only then does one of them look at Isla and Minso and nod in their direction. A third man gets out of the second car, young, in a long coat. This must be the father, Jinho. He walks quickly, but doesn't run. His face is a stone mask. He looks only at his son. He approaches and kneels before them. Ayla sees him closely. He's about 30, handsome, strong features. No shaking in his hands, no tremor in his voice. Minsu ya, he says quietly. His voice is different now, soft, but still tense. The boy breaks away from Isla and throws himself on his father's neck, quietly crying again. Jinho hugs him tightly, shielding him with his body. With one hand, he checks his forehead, his neck, and looks into his eyes. Only after he's assured that his son is truly unharmed does he look up at Isla. You, he says, and it's not a question. Isla nods, trying to stand. Her legs are wobbly from the cold and strain. One of the men in suits steps forward, as if to help, but Jinho stops him with a barely perceptible movement of his hand. He stands up himself, still holding his son. You saved his life, Jinho says. His eyes, dark and impenetrable, study her. He sees her wet hair, her trembling, her bare feet. He sees the bruise already forming on her ankle where her fingers had been pinched. Ayla wants to say, "You're welcome," or anyone would do the same. But under his gaze, the words stick in her throat. She simply nods again. Your name? He asks. Isla? Isla Carter. Isla Carter, he repeats, as if memorizing. I owe you something. It's a debt I can't forget. He says this as a fact, as a statement. Then his gaze sharpens again. He scans the shore. Were you alone here? Did you see anyone? Isla remembers the grip underwater. Minso's gaze on the forest. In the water, someone grabbed my leg. I thought it was a snag, but it was a hand. Jinho's face doesn't change. Only his eyes grow even colder. He gives a short command in his own language to one of the men. He immediately goes to the water, carefully examining the shoreline. Jinho looks at Isla again. You're protected now. It's necessary. He doesn't say it as a suggestion, not as a request. He says it as a sentence, as an immutable rule. Because she jumped into the river, her life has changed, and she understands this, even without knowing why. The second man brings a thick wool blanket from the car. Jinho wraps Minseo in it. The boy barely cries anymore, just clings to his father. Jinho says something quietly to him. Minseo nods and looks at Ila. Komap sumnida, he whispers quietly. Thank you. Jinho looks at his men. They stand, shielded from the world by a solid wall of dark fabric and watchful eyes. He turns back to Ayla. I need to take him to get checked out. My people will take you home and ensure your safety. That's not necessary. Ayla begins. It's necessary, he interrupts softly but firmly. I said it's a duty, and safety is the first part of that duty. He gestures with his hand. A thin leather briefcase is brought to him, but he doesn't open it. Instead, he takes something out of his coat's inside pocket and hands it to Ayla. This isn't a paper business card. It's a rectangle of matte black metal. It feels cold and unexpectedly heavy in your hand. On one side is engraved a complex Eastern symbol, resembling a stylized flower or seal. On the other, there's only one number, 10 digits. No name, no job title. If something happens, if you sense danger, if you see something strange, anything small, you call this number, only this number. Never, ever call anyone else, says Jinho. Ayla clutches the cold metal in her palm. What if I just need to return it? He almost smiles, but it's not a kind smile. You won't return it. This is yours now, as is my protection. My people will take you, and they will be by your side. He turns and, carrying Minso in his arms, walks toward the car. The men surround him. A second later, the cars quietly move off and disappear. Isla stands alone on the shore, in wet clothes, with a heavy black map in her hand. The wind now seems even colder. One of those men drove her home. In a different car, a simple sedan. The man didn't say a word the entire way. He simply opened the door for her, drove her all the way to her house, nodded, and drove away. Isla spent the entire evening trying to recover. She took a hot shower. She examined the bruise on her leg. A clear fingerprint. She called her mother, saying everything was fine, just tired. She didn't mention the river, but the anxiety didn't go away. The boy's words, "They'll see," his father's cold voice, the weight of the map in his jeans pocket. Before bed, she went to the window of her small, second-floor apartment. She drew the curtain and froze. Down below, across the road, in the shade of an old maple tree, stood a car, a dark sedan, the same one they'd brought her in. The dim headlights were on, and behind the wheel sat that same silent man. He wasn't sleeping. He was simply sitting and looking ahead. At her driveway, Isla abruptly let go of the curtain. Her heart pounded. Protection! She remembered Jinho's words. Was that protection? Observation? She surreptitiously pulled the curtain back a centimeter. The car was still there. She stood there for 10 minutes. The car didn't move. She went to bed, but couldn't sleep. Every half hour, she went to the window. At 3 in the morning, the car was still there. At 4:30, it was gone. But the feeling that she was being watched did not go away. The next 2 days passed in a state of nervous tension. The bruise on her leg turned purple. Isla went to work in the library. The world of books and silence usually calmed her, but now she found herself flinching at the sound of a door slamming or someone's unexpected footstep. She tried not to think about the black card. It lay in the farthest compartment of her bag. On the third day, after lunch, she was arranging new arrivals near the modern prose shelf. She looked up and knocked a stack of books onto the floor. 5 meters away from her, by the shelf with guidebooks, stood he, Kim Jinho. He was alone. In a different suit, but just as impeccable. He looked at her calmly, as if he'd been waiting for this reaction. Then he slowly approached, bent down, and silently began helping her gather her books. "You? What are you doing here?" Isla breathed, looking around. There was no one nearby, only the silence of the reading room. "I came to talk to you, Isla Carter," he said, placing the last book on the stack. His voice was quiet, but it carried loudly in the quiet library. "My son is better. He asked me to thank you again. And he drew this." Jinho pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. A child's drawing. A blue river, 2 stick figures, one large with long hair, the other small and red. And the inscription in block letters, "Thank you, Ayla." Isla's throat tightened. She took the drawing. "It's cute. He became very attached to you in those few minutes," Jinho said. "And that's rare. He's cautious around strangers." Isla remained silent, expecting a catch. "I've done some research on you," he continued, looking her straight in the eye. "You've been working here for 3 years. You live alone. Your mother, Marilyn Carter, lives in another area. She has a chronic illness, and her medications are expensive. You help her." His words made me feel cold. He knew. He knew everything. "Why are you saying this?" Isla asked, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "I want to offer you a job," Jinho said. "Minseo needs someone he can trust. After school, 3 to 4 hours a day. Supervision, help with homework, walks. I'll pay you a month equal to what you'd earn here in 6 months." The amount he named next made Isla lean against the shelf for balance. This was enough money to cover all her mother's medication needs, and there would still be enough left over to live on without debt. "Why me?" Isla managed to say. "Because you jumped into an icy river after a stranger's child, without thinking. Because he trusts you, and because I trust you," Jinho replied. There was a strange note in his voice, almost sincerity, but then it disappeared. "And your people? Can't they?" "My people perform other functions. He doesn't trust them. You are not them. You are his hero." Isla looked at the drawing in her hands, at the blue river. "And there are conditions." Jinho's voice became hard as steel again. "You accept them immediately and completely, or we forget this conversation." He paused, letting her know the gravity of the moment. "First, no police, ever. For any matter related to my family or work, you call only the number on that card. Second, no questions. About my work, about my affairs, about people you might see. You ask nothing. Third, you follow all routes and rules that are set for you. No independent changes. Fourth, you remain silent. About work, about Minseo, about me. To everyone, you are just a nanny who found a job through an ad. He pulled another piece of paper from his inside pocket. A contract. Brief, 1 page. It listed the same enormous sum, and the clauses listed all the terms, couched in dry legalese. Do you agree, Isla Carter? She looked at the amount, at the word medication in her head, at the child's drawing, at his stony face. She thought about the bruise on her leg, about the car outside the window, about her icy hand underwater. It was a trap, but a trap from which medication for my mother and stability could have been obtained. She slowly took the pen he held out and sighed. I agree. Jinho sent Pulls up not to her house, but to a high-rise apartment complex in a prestigious part of the city. The building resembles a black glass needle. The driver, a new silent man named Lee, leads Isla through a separate entrance, bypassing the common hall. The elevator goes to the top floor. It opens not onto the common hallway, but directly into the apartment's entryway. The first thing Ayla notices is light. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer views of the entire city. And the second thing is silence. A deep, oppressive silence, despite being right in the center. Jinho greets her. He's wearing casual clothes, dark trousers and a loose shirt, but he looks just as put together as he would in a suit. Welcome, he says without a smile. Minso is waiting. He shows her around the apartment. Everything is spacious, minimalist, expensive, and everywhere there are details that seem strange for an ordinary home. The windows, they're not just big. The glass is too thick, and if you look at them from an angle, you can see a slight grayish tint. They're armored. There are no paintings on the walls. Instead, there are large abstract canvases. Isla notices a thin line, like a crack, barely visible beneath one of them. It looks like a hidden door. Men stand at various points throughout the apartment. They are dressed in dark, comfortable clothes, almost motionless. They all wear tiny headphones with thin wires hidden under their clothes. They don't look at Isla with curiosity. Their gazes glide over her, register her, evaluate her like an object, and then return to observing the surroundings. They are silent. The silence is broken only by the soft hiss of one of their radios. This apartment is not a home. It's a headquarters, a fortress. Minso sits at his desk in his room, assembling a complex construction set. Seeing Ayla, he smiles reservedly, but a spark of joy sparkles in his eyes. Hello, Ayla. Hello, Minso. What are you packing? They talk about school, about the construction set. Jinho watches from the doorway, then nods and leaves, leaving the door ajar. One of the quiet men stands in the hallway outside the door. An hour later, when the ice between them had finally melted and Minso had begun to chat more freely, he suddenly fell silent. He walked over to the door and closed it a little tighter. Then he took Isla's hand and led her to a large bookcase-like cabinet in the corner of the room. I'll show you a secret, he whispers, but Dad said never to go there. Never. He presses the end of one of the shelves. There's a soft click. Part of the cabinet, a whole block of books, pulls away from the wall a centimeter. It's a secret door. What is it? Isla asks quietly. Minso shrugs. I don't know. I looked in once. It's dark and cold, and it smells of iron. I'm scared. He lets go of her hand and quickly latches the door back. Dad said it's for hide and seek, but it's not for playing. At that moment, the door to the room opens. Jinho stands in the doorway. His gaze immediately finds the closet, then shifts to his son and Ayla. Minso, your tutor has arrived, he says in an even voice. Go to the office. The boy obediently leaves. Jinho lingers for a second. His eyes stop again at the closet, then at Ayla. This room is secure, he says. That's why this is his room, and everything you see here is part of that security. You don't need to check anything, understand? Ayla nods, her throat dry. He knows they were just at that door. Work goes on as usual. A week. Ayla comes every day after school. She helps Minso with his homework, and they walk in a strictly designated guarded park. Everything is according to the rules. No questions asked. She'd almost gotten used to the quiet people with headphones, to the bulletproof glass. She'd almost stopped flinching. One evening, returning home, she decided to tidy up her old bag, the one she carried to work at the library. She emptied the contents onto the bed. Keys, a wallet, a few old receipts, a pencil, and some chewing gum, and a small flat black device, about the size of a coin. On one side is a sticky layer, on the other a microscopic grid. It was glued to the inside seam of the bag. right at the bottom, where she rarely looks. Isla picked it up. It was cold. She'd never seen one like it before, but she knew what it was. A bug. A wiretap. She recalled how, on her third day on the job, driver L politely helped her carry her bag to the car. How one of the security guards at the apartment accidentally knocked over her bag in the hallway. The device was on. The indicator light wasn't glowing, but she could feel its weight in her palm. So someone had been listening. All this time. She didn't throw it away. She didn't press it. She carefully placed it back in her bag, in the same place. Her hands were shaking. Now she knew. Her precision included total control. A couple of days later, during her usual walk with Minso in the park, Isla's phone rang. An unknown number. She answered. It was Jinho. His voice sounded businesslike and calm. Isla, stay an hour longer today. Minso has an extra class. Okay, she replied. And one more thing, he added, his tone changing slightly, becoming even more impersonal. The situation with the cargo at the river has been resolved. All questions have been answered. No further action is required. He hung up. Isla froze, holding the phone to her ear. The river. Their river. The very same one. Cargo. Solved. Questions resolved. She looked at Minso, who was swinging on the swing under Lee's watchful eye. She felt cold. What did he mean? What was this cargo? The one who grabbed her leg underwater? What was settled with him? His words sounded like a report. But a report for whom? He knew she was listening, or did he know someone else was listening? Perhaps this call was a performance for other people's ears. She no longer felt like just a nanny. She felt like a pawn on a board whose rules she didn't know. The entrance to their building was guarded by the same man, a young Korean man with a serious face named Chan. He always nodded silently to her as he opened the door. One day, when Isla walked into the hallway alone, Chan, turning away from the camera and bending down as if to adjust a shoe, quietly and quickly said in heavily accented English, "Thank you for the boy. You are a good person." Isla stopped, surprised. None of these people were talking to her. Chan quickly straightened up, his face becoming stony again, but there was a spark of warmth in his eyes she hadn't seen before. The next day, there was another guard on duty, a stranger. Isla, passing by, asked cautiously, "Where is Chan?" The new guard looked at her blankly. "Rotation," he said curtly and turned away. Chan didn't show up again. Not the next day, not the week after. He vanished, as if he'd never existed, for one kind word, for 1 second of humanity. Isla understood the rule that wasn't written into the contract. Any connection, any unnecessary word, was dangerous here, and could cost someone their job, or more. Minso loved it when Ila read aloud to him. They often stopped at the small bookstore next to the park. It was one of the permitted places. One day, while choosing a new book, Minso handed her an old collection of fairy tales. "This one, please." At home, when Isla opened the book to begin reading, she saw an inscription on the end paper, someone else's, uneven handwriting, written in pencil, in English. "Don't trust the driver. L." Isla quickly slammed the book shut. Her heart pounded. L. Lee? Her driver? She looked at Minso. He looked at her expectantly, suspecting nothing. "You know, Minso, this book seems a little boring." Her voice sounded strange. "Let's get the one about dinosaurs instead." He agreed. Isla put the storybook away in her bag. Who wrote this? Chan? Someone else? Was this help or a provocation? She remembered the bug in her bag. If this warning was real, someone was taking a big risk. If it was false, she was being investigated. She decided not to change her behavior. But now, every time she got into LS' car, she felt a chill down her spine. A few days later, after their walk, they got into the car with Lee, and as usual, Minso dozed in the back seat. Lee drove off, but instead of taking the usual route home, he turned in the opposite direction. Isla was wary. "Lee, where are we going?" "There's a traffic jam, isn't there?" "There's a traffic jam on the usual route," Elle replied indifferently, without turning his head. "Let's go the other way. It's faster." He didn't bother asking Jinho for permission over the radio. He just drove. Familiar streets flashed past the window, then less familiar ones. Then they entered an industrial zone. Old warehouses with peeling paint, high fences topped with barbed wire, deserted streets. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows. This area was not on the permitted list. It was a violation of all the rules. "Lee, I don't think this is the right road," Isla said again, trying to sound firm. "Let's go back or call Jinho." We'll be there soon, Lee replied, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The warning in the book flashed brightly in my memory. Don't trust the driver. Lee turned into a narrow alley between two long warehouse buildings. At the end, the passage was blocked by a pile of rusty barrels. He stopped the car abruptly. Isla grabbed the door handle. It was locked. Lee, what's going on? Minso woke up and looked around in fear. Lee didn't answer. He pulled a gun from under the seat. He didn't point it at them. He just held it in his hand. His face was tense, his gaze darting from one rearview mirror to the other. Sit still, he finally said, his voice hoarse. From the other side of the alley, two men in simple dark clothes emerged from the shadows. They walked straight toward the car. One of them held a tool that looked like a crowbar. It was a trap, and Elle was part of it. Isla instinctively threw herself at Minso, shielding him with her body in the back seat. She shielded him, holding his head close to her so he couldn't see. Close your eyes and don't open them, she whispered in his ear. She saw the first of the strangers approach the driver's side window. Lee rolled it down, and at that moment, the roar of engines was heard from behind, at the entrance to the alley. Two black cars squealed as they drove in, blocking the exit. The car doors swung open. People jumped out. They were the same quiet men in dark clothes who had guarded Jinho's apartment. But now they weren't quiet. They moved quickly and precisely. The first shot rang out, sharp, deafening, then another. Lee dropped the gun and yanked his door open, trying to roll out. The man with the crowbar fell to the pavement. A shootout erupted. The roar of gunfire was deafening, pounding the ears. Isla held Minso close, crying with his face buried in her shoulder. She saw the glass in the passenger side window cracked from the impact of a bullet or shrapnel. It all lasted less than a minute. Then it suddenly went silent. Through the windshield, Isla saw one of Jinho's men approach Elle, bend over him, then straighten up and say something into the radio. The other two walked toward their car, pistols at the ready. One of them opened the door. His face was calm. Miss Carter, a boy. Are you hurt? Ayla shook her head, shaking all over. Minso was also unharmed. Please remain seated. We'll move you now. They were driven to the apartment in a different car with a different driver. Isla held Minso's hand silently the entire way. He didn't cry. He simply stared out the window with empty eyes. Tension reigned in the apartment. There were more guards than usual. Jinho was waiting for them in the living room. Seeing his son, he quickly approached, scooped him up, and hugged him tightly, placing his hand behind his head, as if protecting him from the world. He spoke quietly to him in his own language. Then he handed him over to one of the women, who led the boy to his room. Then Jinho turned to Isla. His face was pale with suppressed rage. His eyes burned with a cold fire. All his icy restraint cracked. Are you hurt? He asked in the same tone as the guard. No, Isla whispered. He nodded, clenching his fists. He paced the room, then stopped abruptly in front of her. They were competitors. They bought Li. Their target wasn't the boy. Their target was me, through him. His voice was low and dangerous. They wanted to prove they could reach me. The most valuable thing. He looked at her, and a storm raged in his gaze. You saved him again. You shielded him with yourself. You followed instinct, not rules. And it worked. He came closer. Ayla didn't retreat, even though everything inside her froze. My debt to you, Ayla Carter, he said, enunciating each word clearly, is now doubled, and my responsibility too. They know about you. You're a target, just like him. He took a step back, gathering himself. The rage retreated inside, hiding again behind a mask of control. The rules are changing. From today, your protections will be strengthened, and you're no longer just an employee. You're part of this. No matter how much you want to be, you're involved. Now everything has changed. Isla and Minso aren't just being watched. They're being guarded. Really, they're now surrounded by a constant circle of 2 or 3 people, not counting the driver. The new driver's name, oddly enough, is also L. But he's a different man, older with gray hair at the temples and calm hands. He's silent like everyone else, but his silence is different. Not empty, but focused. One day, as Ela waited by the car, while Minso bought ice cream from the kiosk under the guard's supervision, Lee suddenly broke the rule. He said quietly, without turning around, "Thank you for what you did for the boy." Ayla looked at the back of his head in surprise. He had never spoken first before. "It's my job," she answered cautiously. "No," said Lee. "Work is this." He nodded toward the steering wheel, toward the car. Then, after a pause, He pulled a worn wallet from his inside pocket and handed it over his shoulder. It contained a photograph, a woman with a kind face, two smiling teenage girls. My family. They live far away, in a small town by the sea. Isla looked at the photo, not understanding. They are also protected by Jinho Sahim, Lee added quietly, and took his wallet back. Sahim, Lord. That's the respectful name his people called Jinho. At that moment, Minseo returned with ice cream. The conversation was over, but Ayla understood everything. Lee wasn't just working, he was attached. His family was somewhere protected, under Jinho's control. His loyalty wasn't bought with money alone. That's why he was reliable. And that's why he broke his silence, to say thank you to the man who had protected what was important both to his master and, indirectly, to his own family. A week after the incident, Jinho summoned Ayla to his office. It was a room with the same panoramic view, but without the soft furnishings, just a huge desk, a couple of chairs, and a wall safe. Sit down, he said. On the table lay an oblong wooden box, dark, lacquered, and inlaid. This is for you. Ayla looked at the box without moving. This isn't a bribe or payment, Jinho said, as if reading her mind. It's a gift from Minzo, a token of gratitude. He asked me to give it to him. He opened the lid. Inside, on the velvet, lay an antique bookmark, made of fine silver in the shape of an arrow, decorated with enamel. It was clearly antique and very expensive. He knows you love books, and that you're interested in the history of our city. This is an artifact from the early last century, from here, Jinho explained, his fingers barely touching the metal. Ayla carefully picked up the bookmark. Beneath it, in the corner of the box, lay a folded sheet of paper from a child's notebook. She unfolded it. Written in a child's crooked handwriting was, Dear Ayla, thank you for saving me at the river and then in the car. Dad said you love the history of our town. I tried to find the oldest gift. You are the bravest person. Yours, Minso. She smiled as she looked at the note. Then her gaze fell on the phrase, Dad said you love the history of our city. Who said that? How could Jinho know that? She never talked to him about her interests. She remembered the wiretap in her bag, conversations with her mother on the phone, or something else. He knew about her mother's illness. Now he knew about her passion for history. He collected information. Systematically. For what? For protection? Or for control? Curiosity overcame caution. Ayla decided to examine the gift. Not the artifact itself, but its origin. On the back of the silver arrow was a tiny engraving, LF 1912, and the name of a workshop that no longer existed. She went to the city archives, where she sometimes worked on her small local history projects. She asked for information about the workshop and which buildings or organizations commissioned their products at that time. An hour later, she received a folder containing copies of old documents and newspaper clippings. The workshop served wealthy merchants. Among her clients, she came across a familiar name, Kim and Partners. Founder, Kim Tae-sik. She kept scrolling. She stopped at a yellowed newspaper article from 2013. The headline read, Fire at the Vertical Business Center. One victim, damage estimated in the millions. The article listed the companies damaged in the fire, including the aforementioned Kim and Partners. It said the fire started late at night, killing a security guard. The cause was never fully determined, with faulty wiring remaining the leading theory. According to the article, the owner of Kim and Partners at the time was Kim Tae-sik. His son and heir, Kim Jinho, declined to comment. Ayla leaned back in her chair. 2013, 10 years ago. Jinho was about 19 then. A dead security guard, cause unknown. Her father's business burned to the ground. It wasn't just a gift, it was a piece of his past. That very past about which no questions could be asked. Why had he given it to her? Was it simply because Minseo wanted the oldest gift? Or was it a message, a warning, or, strangely enough, an act of trust? That same night, Ayla was awakened by a phone call. The screen read, unknown number. Normally, she wouldn't have answered, but something made her lift the receiver to her ear. Hello? She whispered. Silence. Then a quiet, distorted voice, as if filtered. A man's. He spoke broken English. A map. A black map. It's the key. Ayla sat up in bed, her heart pounding. What? Who is it? He's keeping track. Everyone who receives it. All debts. You're on the list now. Be careful with gifts from the past. The connection was lost. Ayla sat in the darkness, clutching her phone. Key? Accounting? List? She remembered the heavy metal in her hand, the Eastern symbol. It wasn't just a pass for communication. It was a sign, a mark. Anyone who received such a card owed Jinho a favor, or he owed them a favor, and he recorded it. And the last phrase, be careful with gifts from the past. This is clearly a reference to the bookmark. This means the caller knew about the gift. He was keeping an eye on her and warned her. Who could it have been? Chan, the missing guard? One of the competitors? Or someone within the Jinho system who was trying to help her? In the morning, still shaken by the call from the night before, Isla reached into her bag. She wanted to look at that black card again, touch its cold surface, try to figure out what this key was. She pulled out the internal organizer, then everything inside. Then she checked every pocket, every corner. There was no map. In its place, in the small zippered pocket where she always kept it, lay a plain white business card. Smooth, paper. Engraved on it, in the same font as the metal card, was the name Kim Jinho, and the same single number. She was replaced. Who? When? Her bag was always in plain sight at Jinho's apartment. She never left it unattended at the library either. Driver Ellen? Security guards? Someone in her building? She took the paper business card. It was light, meaningless. The real key, heavy and cold, was gone. Now she only had the number. The thing the mysterious stranger had said was important was gone. It had been taken. So someone didn't want her to have it, or didn't want her to do something with it. Ayla didn't tell Jinho anything about the missing card or the phone call. She watched. During one of their walks in the park, while they were playing hide-and-seek, guards stood around the perimeter, creating a safe zone. The boy accidentally found her behind a tree. He laughed. I found you! Now you drive! Ayla smiled. Okay, count to 30. Minso closed his eyes and began to count. Suddenly, he opened one eye and whispered, Ayla, I saw it then. What did you see? She asked quietly. When we were driving with Dad, the new Uncle L put something in your bag, small and shiny, but Dad said I shouldn't say anything, ever, about what uncles do. He closed his eyes tightly again and continued counting. Ayla froze. The new L, the silent one, with a photo of the family. He put something in her bag. After the black card disappeared? Or before? What was it? Another bug? Or, maybe he switched the card? On Jinho's orders. The no questions rule was now working against her. She couldn't ask either Lee or Jinho. She could only guess. It was the weekend. Ayla decided to visit her mother. She went to the local market to buy some fresh fruit. New L drove her and waited at the entrance. The security guard followed her at a respectful distance, pretending to be just a passerby. She was choosing apples from a familiar vendor when a face flashed in the crowd. Short black hair, familiar brown eyes, a scar above his eyebrow. Chan, the missing guard. He stood by the nut stand, dressed in simple civilian clothes, looking not at her but somewhere off to the side. But Ayla was certain. It was him. Their gazes met for a split second. Chan gave no sign of recognition. He simply turned away calmly. But as he turned away, his hand, resting on the counter, made a barely perceptible movement. His index finger briefly touched his lips, then dropped. The silence sign. Then he disappeared into the crowd of shoppers as if he had never been there. Jinho, the security guard, who was following Ayla, didn't notice anything. Ayla continued picking fruit, but her hands were shaking. Chan was alive. He was moving freely around the city, but he was hiding, and he had warned her to remain silent. So he knew she was being guarded, and he knew he himself was in danger. From whom? From competitors? Or from Jinho himself? On Monday, Ayla went to work at the library. She was trying to get back into her usual routine. While she was away, the system on her work computer had been updated. That's what the system administrator had said. When she turned on the computer and entered her password, the screen went black for a second. Then the regular desktop loaded. But instead of the usual shortcuts, a single document was open on the screen. It was a screenshot of her mother's bank account, Marilyn Carter's. The account contained a large, round sum, a sum that had never been there before. Below it was the line "last deposited." The date was last Friday. The sender's name was hidden, revealing only the account number, which began with a string of letters she'd once seen on a document in Jinho's apartment. Ayla quickly closed the document. She checked her browser history. Clean. She checked her system. No signs of hacking. But it was a message. Someone had accessed her workstation to show her this. Who? The one who wanted to remind her that her financial security depended on Jinho? Or the one who wanted to show how deeply Jinho could intrude into her life, even into her library? She couldn't ask Jinho about this or it would break the no questions rule, but she couldn't ignore it anymore. That evening, when Minseo's lessons ended and the boy was taken away by his tutor, Ayla didn't leave. She stayed in the living room and waited for Jinho to emerge from his office. He saw her and was slightly surprised. "Do you need something?" "Yes," said Ayla. She couldn't stand this game any longer. "I want to ask, what does all this have to do with me? For real?" Jinho stopped. He looked at her appraisingly. "What's this for?" "To everything. To the cars that shoot. To the guards that disappear. To the gifts from the burned-out buildings. To the money in my mother's account. I'm a nanny, but they're shooting at me. Why?" Jinho was silent for a few seconds. Then he sighed. It was the first time she saw a hint of weariness in him. "You weren't just a nanny the moment you jumped in the river," he said honestly. "You saved my son. You entered my enemy's sights. You became a vulnerability, a weak link in the chain I built around him and myself." He walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "And I protect this link. I protect you just as I protect him, because his safety now depends on yours, because you are part of his world, and because I gave my word. You protect by controlling," Ayla breathed, "by listening, by switching cards, by paying bills." He turned around, his face serious. "Yes, it's part of the defense. Control is the only way to anticipate a threat. I can't protect what I don't know, and I need to know everything about who's around my son, including his financial stability, so that enemies don't have leverage over you." He said this without malice, without excuses, as a statement of fact. "So now you have a choice," Jinho continued. "The situation is getting more complicated. The incident with Elle wasn't the last. Your presence here, your connection with Minseo, is a risk factor for you." He returned to the table and took 2 envelopes out of the drawer. "Option 1. You and your mother leave to another city far away. You'll be provided with new documents, good startup capital, and a job. You'll be completely safe. You'll never hear from us again. It's a clean solution." He put the first envelope aside. "Option 2. You stay, but then the rules change. No questions asked no longer applies. You'll know more. You'll see more. You'll become more than just an employee. You'll become part of the system, to understand how to act, to survive, and to protect it." He placed the second envelope in front of her. "You can't refuse a choice. You must decide. Leave and live your life, or stay and learn the truth about the world you've entered." Ayla looked at the 2 envelopes. The first was the path to freedom, to a normal life, to safety for her mother. Everything she could have dreamed of just a few months ago. The second was a path deeper, into darkness, into danger, into a world where people disappear and gunfire breaks out in the streets. But in this world, there was Minso, the boy who trusted her, who drew her a picture, who saw Uncle El put something in her bag, and told her about it, breaking his father's rules. She thought of his frightened eyes in the car, of how he'd pressed himself against her as the shots rang out. He was a hostage to his father's world. He had no choice. She had it. She looked up at Jinho. He was waiting. No impatience, no pressure, just waiting. "If I leave," she asked quietly, "will he be safe?" "I'll do everything in my power to achieve this," Jinho answered honestly. "But my powers are not limitless. The threat will remain. You'll just be outside its radius." Ayla looked at the door where Minso remained. She imagined leaving, erasing this number from her memory, trying to forget. She couldn't. She slowly pushed the first envelope aside. Her hand fell on the second. "I want to know," she said clearly. "I want to know who I trust with Minso's life every day, and what kind of world surrounds him. I'm staying." Jinho nodded. There was no joy or relief in his eyes, only respect and a new sense of responsibility. "Okay," he said. "Then it all starts again. Starting tomorrow." Jinho doesn't start the conversation right away. He leads Ayla not into his office, but into a small room she's never seen before. It's like a library or a study, but more intimate. The shelves aren't lined with office folders, but with books, a few albums, and framed drawings of Minseo's childhood. He silently walks over to the shelf, picks up a simple wooden frame, and hands it to Ayla. The photo shows a young Korean woman with a gentle smile and kind eyes. She is hugging little Minseo, who is about 3 years old in the photo. The boy has the same bright smile as his mother. "Her name was Seohyun," Jinho says quietly. He's looking out the window, not at the photo. "Minso's similar to her. In character," Isla holds the photo, not knowing what to say. She died 3 years ago. In a car accident, he continues. His voice is even, but there's a steely tension to it. Officially, it was an accident. Unofficially, it was my then partner's response to me refusing a case. They knew where she would be at that hour. They had calculated the route. He finally looks at Ayla. She died because of my work, because of the world I existed in back then. I couldn't protect her. I thought the threats were aimed only at me. He takes the photo back and carefully places it on the shelf. That won't happen to Minseo. I've built everything differently. I've become stronger, tougher. I control every step, but the control isn't absolute. As you've seen, he turns to face her. You've entered his life. You've become important to him. I see how he looks forward to your visits, how he trusts you, and I can't allow him to lose another person he cares about because of me, because of my actions. Therefore, your safety, your choice to know the truth, is no longer just your concern. It's part of my strategy to protect him. I don't want another face in a black-framed photograph on his conscience. Or mine. Isla listened, and the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The cover story of the accident, her father's burned-out business, his wife's death, his obsession with safety, his coldness. It wasn't just cruelty or paranoia. It was a shield forged from pain and guilt. She understands one simple thing now. Her protection is a cage with thick walls. You can't go anywhere in it. You can't say anything, but these same walls protect you from bullets. This cage is her strength in this new world. Okay, Ayla says, her voice firmer than she expected. I'm staying. I want to know the rules, the real rules of this world. Not just keep quiet and don't ask questions. I want to know how to survive in it, how to spot a threat, how to act if something goes wrong. I don't want to be just cargo to be guarded. I want to understand. Jinho looks at her for a long moment. Then he nods slowly. That makes sense. It would be foolish to demand your loyalty without giving you the tools. But these aren't lectures. This is practice. You'll learn by observing. I'll explain situations. Lee and the others will teach you the basics of safety. How to behave in a car, how to spot surveillance, how to use the panic button, which you'll now always carry with you. He pauses. The first and foremost rule, which supersedes all previous ones. Your life and Minseo's life are the absolute priority. Everything else is secondary. Not property, not reputation, not deals. You and he are the most important asset to be preserved. You act based on this. Always. Isla nods. She feels the weight of responsibility growing heavier, but the fear is also receding. Fear of the unknown. Now she will have a map of this dark territory. A sketchy one, perhaps, but a map nonetheless. A few days later, Elle warns Ela. There will be an important visit tonight. You better be with Minso in his room after 7. But at 6:30, Jinho himself enters the game room. Ayla, come out with me for a minute. Minseo, stay here with Lee. An elderly Korean man stands in the living room. He's short, dressed in an impeccable traditional suit rather than a business jacket. His hair is gray, his face is wrinkled, but his eyes are black and sharp as gimlets. Beside him stand 2 of his men, rougher-looking than Jinho's men, with distant expressions. The old man says something to Jinho in Korean, his voice raspy and unhurried. Jinho replies briefly and respectfully, but without obsequiousness. Then the old man turns his head and looks at Ela. His gaze glides over her from head to toe. He doesn't hide his assessment. He looks at her not as a person, but as an object, a strange, incomprehensible thing in his field of vision. There's neither interest nor hostility in his gaze. There's a cold curiosity mixed with a slight disdain. He asks the question, nodding in her direction. Jinho answers clearly. Isla catches the familiar word for family, kadok, and a word that seems to mean assistant or confidant. The old man raises an eyebrow. He looks at Ayla again, and now there's a hint of something akin to mockery or distrust in his gaze. He mutters something, and one of his men smiles faintly. Jinho's expression doesn't change. He says another sentence, firmly and clearly. The old man shrugs, as if to say, "That's your business," and turns away, starting the conversation about something else. Later, Jinho would tell her, "It was an elder, a man from my father's past. He's testing my mettle. Everything he sees, he'll judge, including you." The visit continues over dinner, to which Isla is not invited. She sits with Minso, Basti, reading a book to him, but listens to the muffled voices coming from the dining room. When the old man leaves, a tense silence falls over the apartment. Jinho looks tired. The next day, when Ayla arrives, Jinho asks her into his office again. On the desk lies a thin envelope made of thick yellowish paper without any writing on it. The elder forgot this envelope yesterday, Jinho says. On purpose. He left it on the shelf in the hallway where you usually hang your bag. My people saw it. Ayla looks at the envelope. It's unsealed. The edge simply folded over. What's in it? Information. Possibly fictitious. Possibly real. A test. He wanted to see what you'd do. Would you take it, look at it, try to copy it, or pass it on to someone else? Ayla remembers that appraising, contemptuous look. It was a test of greed, stupidity, and betrayal. What was I supposed to do? What you did, Jinho says. Don't touch him. You didn't even go to that shelf yesterday after he left. My people reported it, but I want you to do it now. Mong the envelope. Ayla carefully takes the envelope. It's lightweight and appears to contain a single piece of paper. Now give it to me, Jinho says. She hands him the envelope, not bothering to look inside, not trying to open it. Jinho takes it. Why? She asks. Because you're smart. You realized it was a trap, and because you trust me when it comes to this side of life. You trust that if there's something I need you to know, I'll tell you. Myself. He places the envelope in the safe without opening it. He wanted to test your loyalty and your instincts. You passed. Now for him, you're not just an object or a random girl. Now you're a person, branded with my family's mark, with all the consequences and risks. Things are different now. Ayla no longer just shows up on schedule. Her life and the lives of her family are more closely intertwined. She has new responsibilities. She and Elle study safe and alternative route maps. She learns to spot signs of possible surveillance, repeating cars, unnatural behavior of people on the street. She wears a small alarm keychain on a chain under her clothes. One press, and a signal goes directly to Jinho and his entire team. She doesn't just walk with Minseo during the day in the park. Sometimes Elle wakes her up in the middle of the night, a couple of hours after she's fallen asleep at home. A simple text, walk, 20 minutes. She gets dressed, goes out, and they're picked up. They drive through the city at night, changing routes, stopping in different places. It's part of the protocol. They can't be predictable. Minseo, sleepy but content, treats it like a game, a nighttime adventure with Ayla. He sleeps on her lap in the car as they cruise along deserted avenues. She's no longer a nanny. She's his guarantor of safety, a human shield, but also eyes, ears, and an extra brain that now knows the rules of the game. She's his father's silent partner. She doesn't participate in his affairs, but she's a key element in the system that protects his most precious possession. Sometimes he and Jinho talk after Minseo falls asleep, briefly, to the point. He explains the threat structure, why the route was changed today, which of the competitors are active. He speaks to her as an equal, like a professional. The river, the very one where it all began, is far behind. Sometimes Ayla sees it from the bridge during a night drive. Dark, calm, but their new current is swift, rushing along a winding and dangerous channel. It forgives no mistakes. But Ayla no longer floats with her eyes closed. She is learning to feel its current, to see the pitfalls, and she has a reason to stay afloat. The sleepy head of a boy trustingly pressed against her shoulder in the back seat of an armored car racing through the night. A new life becomes a habit, but it's impossible to get used to it completely. Every morning, Ayla checks the keychain on her chain. She now knows what each mode of its light means. Solid green, all is well. Flashing green, heightened, alert, red, immediate threat. It always glows a solid green, but its presence under her clothing is a constant reminder. She notices details now. Lee, the new driver, never parks in narrow alleys. He always parks the car so he can immediately pull away without having to back up. The guards never stand with their backs to the street or the crowd. Their eyes are constantly moving. One day, while she and Minseo are walking in the park, Ayla notices a man herself. He's sitting on a bench with a newspaper, but he doesn't turn the page for long. His gaze darts not over the text, but over the playground. She doesn't panic. She's doing what she's been trained to do. Calmly, she takes Minseo's hand and says, "Listen, I saw an interesting bird there. Let's go see it." She leads him away from the bench, to where their security guard stands. She catches the guard's eye and nods slightly in the man's direction. The guard doesn't turn his head, but his posture shifts, becoming more collected. A minute later, A second member of their team approaches the bench, supposedly to ask the time. The man with the newspaper gets up and quickly leaves. The threat, if it was her, is neutralized without a word. Jinho will later confirm it was a small-time scout from the competition. A perimeter check. Isla feels not fear, but a strange, cold satisfaction. She did the right thing. She didn't fail. Her relationship with Minseo also changes. Now she's not just an adult looking out for him. She's one of his own. He shares with her not only school stories, but also his little fears. He's afraid of the dark hallway. He doesn't like loud fireworks because they sound like gunshots. He never mentioned that day in the car, but his shadow remains. One day, while playing a board game, he suddenly says, without looking up, "Ayla, are you ever afraid?" She answers honestly, "Yes, sometimes." "And what do you do when you're afraid?" "I think about how important it is to protect myself, and then the fear recedes, because I have to act." He nods, as if understanding. "Me too. When I'm scared, I think about you being there." After moments like these, the cold metal of the keychain around her neck doesn't seem so heavy. Jinho continues his lessons. They take place not in a classroom, but in action. One day, as Elle drives them through the business district, Jinho, sitting next to Ayla, points out a low gray glass building. "See that entrance? That's the office of my former partner. We don't cross paths, but his people are sometimes active in this area. If you see a car with that license plate," he points to a photo on his phone, "that's a reason to change your route immediately without waiting for instructions." Ayla remembers. She creates a hidden folder on her phone with photos and descriptions Jinho gives. It's her personal cheat sheet. Gradually, she begins to understand the complex mechanics of Jinho's world. This isn't just a gangster war. It's business. A very tough one, where debts are repaid not with money, but with services, where alliances are fragile, and respect is built on strength and caution. Jinho isn't a king. He's a top manager at a dangerous corporation. He's building a legal front, trying to move on from the darkest deeds of the past. But the past won't let go. Rivals see weakness in his son. Elders like that Korean are checking to see if he's become too soft, allowing an outsider so close to the heart of his empire. Ayla finds herself at the center of this pressure. She is living proof of his humanity, and in his world, that is often considered a flaw. One evening, when Minseo is already asleep and Jinho is working in his office, a quiet but insistent siren sounds in the apartment. This is not a regular alarm. It is a special signal from the security system. Ayla freezes in the living room. A second later, the office door swings open, and Jinho comes out. His face is focused, a tablet in his hands. "Don't worry. The peripheral alarm was triggered. Someone attempted to unauthorizedly access the cameras at the building's service entrance. Lower floors. No one got in." He says this calmly, but Ayla sees the tension in his shoulders. "Is this a common occurrence?" "Enough," he replies, looking at the data on the tablet. "It's like mosquitoes. Annoying, but not fatal. However, mosquitoes sometimes carry diseases, so they need to be monitored too." He hands her the tablet. A red dot is blinking on the building's map. Next to it is a log of access attempts. It looks like a hacker attack. These aren't the same people who shoot in the streets. These are different, more modern. They're looking for information, vulnerabilities. So what do? We have our own team that hunts them down, and we change the protocols. Tomorrow, all passwords and movement algorithms will be updated. You and Lee will be sent new instructions. He turns off the tablet. Siren falls silent. "See, protection isn't just armor and guns. It's also codes and programs and constant updating. There's always a new threat. You always need to be one step ahead." Isla nods. She thinks of her simple life in the library, of dusty books. This world is like a living, constantly evolving organism, full of hidden threats and complex systems, and she's inside it now. A few days later, something she'd been prepared for, but hadn't fully believed, happened. She and Minseo are in a shopping mall, a strictly designated area with vetted security. Minseo needs to go to the restroom. They're accompanied by a single security guard, Seng. Isla waits outside by the fountain. Suddenly, she sees Seng, standing at the entrance to the men's room, turn his head sharply, his hand reaching for his ear, for the earpiece. His expression hardens. He looks at Ayla and makes a quick but precise gesture, finger to lips, silence, and then points toward the exit of the shopping arcade. This is their signal. Immediate, quiet exit. Ayla doesn't ask. She immediately goes into the men's room. Minseo is just emerging from the stall. Minseo, the game has begun. Quiet mode. Come with me quickly. The boy immediately falls silent, his eyes becoming serious. He takes her hand. They go out to Senator. He has already taken a small black bag from his pocket. He takes out 2 simple baseball caps and 2 dark windbreakers. Put them on. Quickly. They put them on over their clothes. Now they look different. Sen leads them not to the main exit, but towards the service areas. He says something into the microphone. His voice is quiet and quick. They pass through the restaurant kitchen, where the cooks look at them without surprise. Apparently, such routes are agreed upon. They emerge into the loading yard. There, not their usual car, but a gray minibus with tinted windows is waiting. The door opens. Lee is behind the wheel. He nods. They jump inside. Sen sits down next to her, keeping an eye on the yard. The car starts moving and pulls out onto the street. Only then does Sen exhale. Reconnaissance. 2 cars at the main entrance. The license plates aren't ours. The people inside aren't locals. They're looking at all the children coming out. Couldn't have been an accident. Isla hugs Minseo. He's shaking, but silent. Well done, she tells him quietly. You're a hero. He nods, burying his face in her shoulder. Lee drives a complex route around the city, constantly checking the map and the messages in his earpiece. 40 minutes later, they pull into the underground garage of an apartment complex unfamiliar to Ayla. Jinho and 2 other people are already waiting for them there. Jinho quickly picks Minseo up in his arms, checking that he's all right. Then he looks at Ayla. Are you okay? Yes. Everything went according to protocol. Good. It was an unscheduled check of the system. And of your actions. You did a perfect job. Ayla realizes it wasn't just a threat. It was a drill, but with real competitor scouts involved. Jinho used the situation to test everyone. It's brutal, but effective. In this world, there's no room for sentimentality. Even in training, he shows them the apartment on the top floor. Not as luxurious as the main one, but safe. We'll stay here for a couple of days until we're sure their interest has waned. For Minseo, this is another adventure. For Ayla, another lesson. Her world has narrowed again to the safe walls, but now she herself has become part of the mechanism that guards these walls. She is no longer a passenger. She is a cog. Responsible, important, but still part of the machine. Before going to bed in their new apartment, Minseo asks, Ayla, will you sit with me while I fall asleep? She sits on the edge of the bed. He looks at her in the semi-darkness. We're always together, right? Even when we hide? Yes, Ayla says. And it's true. We're a team. He smiles and closes his eyes. Ayla looks out at the city lights through the armored window, but this time not the panoramic one. The flow of life has truly become fast and dangerous, but she has an anchor, and more than one. Her anchor is the trust of this sleeping boy, and her shield is the knowledge his father gives her, and her own resolve, born in the icy waters of that river and forged in the fire of this new, scary, and strange world. She doesn't know what tomorrow will bring, but she knows what she will do today. Protect, survive, be part of a team. A week passes in the safe apartment. It's a time of strange calm. Life follows a simplified schedule. Lessons for Minseo, quiet games, food delivered. Jinho is almost always there, working remotely. His presence has become familiar, almost mundane. Ayla continues to study. Now the lessons cover more than just external threats. One evening, Jinho places a laptop with a clean operating system in front of her. Hack it, he says simply. Not to steal data, to understand how someone who wants access thinks. Find vulnerabilities. It's a puzzle. Ayla, accustomed to library catalogs, is now learning the basics of cybersecurity. She reads articles and watches training videos provided to her. It's challenging, but it's distracting and gives her a sense of control. She understands that security also means preventative analysis. Minso misses his toys and his big apartment. To entertain him, Ayla comes up with quests. They draw a map of the apartment and search for hidden treasures, maybe a new book or a fruit bar. These games, without the boy even realizing it, develop skills such as attention to detail, memorizing the layout of a room, and moving quietly. Jinho observes this. One day, seeing Ayla explaining to Minseo how to navigate by the sun outside the window to find treasure, he says, You're teaching him something useful. Thank you. This thank you sounds different than before, more personal. A few days later, the signal arrives. The threat has passed. They can return. The move happens quickly and unnoticed. They return to their familiar surroundings, but everyone feels the change. Ayla is no longer a guest here. Her opinion is sought when planning Minso's daily routine. She can suggest changing the route of a walk if something seems suspicious. And L listens. She's become part of a system, reliable, proven, and this knowledge brings not only heaviness, but also a strange peace. She has a purpose, a place, and people she protects. The river is far away, but her swimming skills, her ability to stay afloat in cold and dangerous water, remain with her, and now she teaches others.